She'll become your best pal when she's here.
Who's here?
She's here,
Doris Dear.
It's Doris, with a cocktail in hand. She's the perfect housewife, and her rumpus room might have a band.
It does? Well, maybe.
It's Doris and her dear friends. They live up in the sky, but for the chance to sing and dance, her friends might also buy. It's Doris. It's Doris Dear. She's that girl on the street. She'll show up with a sweet. You'll adore when she knocks on your door. Press her on. It's Doris Dear's Talk.
Greetings, my dears, and welcome back to the Rumpus Room. Now, in the last episode, we introduced you to our pick of the season, Helen Gurley Brown, author of Sex and the Single Girl. And we started to listen to excerpts from her album, Lessons in Love. Now, in 1965, after her book had taken the world by storm, she took over as an editor-in-chief of a rather dry literary magazine called Cosmopolitan. And she used her new vision of what women should be and brought it to its pages. When she finished being editor 32 years later, it had become the go-to magazine for both men and women to read about a modern, sexually assured, style-conscious, ambitious, and sexually confident brand of feminism. Today we take a listen to Miss Brown's first bit of advice on how to have an affair. The rules? Simply astonishing. Do tell, Miss Brown.
I assume the girl you want is some very special girl, no pushover. So how do you get her? Well, I believe most girls are attainable by somebody. Really, most girls. But you have to work at it. I think the reason you don't always succeed is that you want everything now. This minute, tonight's the night. You're sort of lazy, and you aren't thinking about how it is with her. So, rule 1 is, take time to court her. Rule 2, love her out of bed.
Okay, there's always rules. Now for some more.
Laugh at her jokes. Women have fantastic egos too, you know. Even pretty little slips of girls just love to be thought fascinating and funny. Make her talk to you and you listen. Don't ever patronize her. No matter how shy she is, make her feel that with you she's a dynamo. Rule 3, admire her character, even if she doesn't have any. You like the way she handles her job, her friends, her family, her money, and when bedtime comes, you'll have her thinking that with you at least, she can't do anything wrong. This treatment won't work with girls who like to be punished and mistreated, but we're not talking about them just now.
Oh dear. Well, Ms. Brown was very ahead of her time. Well, thank you, Helen. Court her, don't ever patronize her, make her feel like a dynamo. What does that even mean? Now let's remember that this was really the early 1960s and times, well, a little different for women. Women couldn't buy a house or even have a bank account unless their husbands co-signed with them. I can tell you that Taffy, my mother, would have none of that. She fought long and hard to be equal. Taffy was a whiz. Although Taffy was never a Cosmo girl, she was a beauty and a model and knew how to get her way in a time when women were not equal. I do remember seeing Helen's book tucked in next to the sofa where Mom would sit and spend her late afternoons reading her books. Now I'm wondering whether Mom was the so-called dynamo. So next week, we delve into more of Helen's rules. Remember, you can find out all the information on this episode at dorisdear.com/girl-talk. Oh, who could that be?
Hi, Doris. It's like my Uber. Wait outside. Okay. It's me, Leslie.
Leslie Carrara-Rudolph. How are you, my darling?
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. This is magical.
Welcome to the Rumpus Room.
I love the Rumpus Room. It's so rumpusy.
It's, well, yes. Well, as they said in I Love Lucy, why do you call it the Rumpus Room? And Lucy and Ricky's neighbor in Connecticut said, well, every time we have a rumpus, we go to the room. So it's a rumpus room. So today's cocktail on the show is called an Old Cuban. And it's actually not...
Wait, and you just talked about Lucy and Ricky.
Right? Oh,
That
see,
was
it's
a
the
nice
world.
segue.
It's
It was a good
segue.
segue.
So this is actually a new drink created for a bar here in New York City, but it's wonderfully refreshing with rum and champagne.
Ooh, wow,
So-
I get the fancy.
Yes, you get fancy. So cheers. Here's to a wonderful time in the Rumpus Room today.
Salute.
Oh, I like that. That's
Oh,
kind
my.
of good.
Oh.
Mint, a little bit of bitters.
Yeah, and it's sneaking up right into my, happy spot. It's made me go, it's giving me this,
Well, you know, champagne and bubbles anytime. It's good, right?
wow, what is it called again? An Old Cuban?
An Old Cuban.
But wouldn't I, can I have an old Cuban? And then someone's gives me a cigar. I was like, no, it's a drink. Can you make it wet? And then they just dip the cigar in the water. This isn't what I had at Doris's. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. I'm going to drink more so
Well,
that
this is
doesn't-
going to happen a lot today, folks. So buckle yourself in because the Rumpus Room has a lot of voices right now. So, okay, so you went to San Francisco State U?
Yes.
Yes, and you majored in child development through the arts?
Yes.
What does that even mean?
Okay, so wow, this is you.
We're getting deep, honey.
You went
We are
deep
getting
diving.
deep.
Yes, I'm from the Bay Area. I'm super excited about that. So I designed my major. So I just I had some learning challenges. I have a perception processing disorder, which is kind of I thought I was ADHD. TNT, which is explosive attention deficit disorder, and dyslexic. I was like, there's got to be something. And turns out, I switch words around, or I'm a visual. I don't know if you're like this, but when words kind of crash in my head, but stories, if I had to take a multiple choice test, I would fail it. But if you ask me what I know about something,
Oh my gosh, we are so much the same.
I could totally
can't
write
take
about it.
tests. I can't take.
No.
But I could tell you, I could take a multiple choice exam about 1776, the history. I would completely fail it, but if you asked me to tell you the story, I would know every single
Yeah.
fact in story. We are storytellers.
right, because I love theater, and I did a lot of after-school programming. I mean, I've had my own business since I was 16. I paint windows, I paint kids' clothes, I started doing Parks and Rec programs. I would draw, I would do puppets, and I realized that, and we've had these conversations before, there's something about reaching kids through the arts. The arts are how we collaborate with our spirits. And it's a safe place. And I don't know if it was me or my puppets or who I am, but I realized that there was a way that I could reach these kids in different ways. So I went to San Francisco State and I said, look, this is what I love to do. And they said, well, why don't you design your own major? I had to write, this is why I think.
Storytelling.
And I made up child development through the arts. That I'm the only one that's ever done it. So that was it. And I was just my mom and dad were freaked out. They were like, wait, it took me a while to get to college because, I had scholarships, but I also was working in between. And so I graduated late. But I told Mom, I want to be the ultimate entertainer for kids. I want to be Pop and Wonk. I want to be that thing. So I have a degree in child development through
Well,
the arts.
that's fantastic. I love that.
Salute. I'm going to drink now.
Salute, yes, salute to all of that.
Drinking in the middle of the day.
I love that, right?
I feel naughty,
Welcome
but
to
it's,
the
you know,
Rumpus Room.
I love this Rumpus Room.
What we do.
And the drink kind of matches the couch.
I know. Well, it's all theming. I took my lesson from Barbara Streisand. She always had to match her surroundings.
Oh, that's smart.
So let's talk about something that we have in common.
Oh,
You then end up at Disney. At Walt Disney World, darling. Okay. So we know so many of the same people at Disney. And how long were you with Disney World? How long were you at the park?
Okay, this is kind of weird. So we'll start at San Francisco, because how does someone go from San Francisco State
where
to
does that? Yeah.
All right, so in San Francisco, I was doing theater in the Bay Area, Walnut Creek, arts there, and then I auditioned. I was in a show called Beach Blanket Babylon.
Oh, the famous.
Yeah.
Chris March's beautiful costumes.
Yes. So I played Dorothy and Madonna. I'm not going to let Miss Gulch take my total. I don't care what she says. And so it was Dorothy going around the world looking for love. And then I ended up somehow as Madonna. Vogue flew over the audience, came down, married Elvis every night. As you do, with giant hats. We sang at the World Series Battle of the Bay. I mean, it was crazy. So I was in that show, and Ronnie Rodriguez, I guess, was in town doing a talent search for Disney World, because they would go all over the place.
Yeah.
And he approached me after the show, and he goes, would you consider coming to Disney World? I was like, what? We're having auditions. And I'm like, no. Like, I'm happy in my hometown.
Yeah.
My
career has taken off.
Well, I'm in Beach Blanket Babylon. I was doing theater for young audience. I was in Sweeney Todd. I did Little Shop of Horrors. I was doing all kinds of really chorus line, all these great things. I did my first one-woman show, Life in Other People's Shoes, which is there's shoes everywhere, and I would cartoon characters, and then I'd put on the shoes and go into character, weird stuff like that. And I was like, no, I'm pretty good at where I'm at. And he said, well, just come to the audition. So I went to the audition, and he said, we're looking for this. There's this place called Pleasure Island, and there's different clubs. There's the Adventures Club. There's the Comedy Warehouse. Comedy Warehouse does improv, but we want to put a show in there for young audiences that's not improv. You should come out. And I realized I'd never been anywhere but my hometown, and I was like, wow. I go, maybe I should leave my home to see this adventure. So I went to Disney because of that. And when I got there, they put me in the Adventures Club. The Adventures Club was a 1930s social club, or 1940s social club, so all the improv had to be within that time. I played Dusty Cabinets. That was my maid's name, the sanitation technician. Samantha Sterling, or at the time it was Mandora, and she was an adventuress. And then Pamelia Perkins, the club president. So we had to be 3 different characters, and then in the summer we had to be a gypsy. But
I've just got to say, like, one of the best shows. That was the best club. The fact that it doesn't exist anymore is so sad, because it was so good.
It was so good.
And I can't imagine doing it, but because the work must have been exhausting, all those characters, how many times a night you had to do that.
I will say I got my best training there, because think about it, we did improv from 7 at night till 1 o'clock in the morning. I cut my teeth there, because you work really hard. Your job is to include everyone.
Yes.
And make them feel seen and heard and special, and make that Disney magic. Because I wanted to work with family audiences, and I was in a bar, every time I went up, is it every 3 months or 6 months you would get reviewed?
Yeah.
They'd pull you in, and they'd say, blah, blah, blah. Do you want, and I'd say, you know what, I'm in a bar, I really want to work with family audiences. Cut to, I go to California, and I'm visiting my friend, and Sandy Fox says, they're having auditions for the Muppets, and you've always loved the Muppets. Sandy Fox put me on the radar, and so I was in LA. I had an HBO workspace. Like, they took me to HBO. I can't remember who was the head of HBO at the time. They said, look, it's Comedy Central now, but they go, here's a theater space. It's for comedians and writers and everything. And I was still touring with Life in Other People's Shoes, the show I told you where there's shoes everywhere, and I would cartoon characters. So I did that show, and someone from the Muppets came and said, we're having audition for female comedians who can sing. And so I went to the cattle call. I had Sandy Fox in my ring, and you had to do a monologue and a song. So my monologue was my 2-minute Wizard of Oz. My song, I went to sing, and he goes, that's not necessarily. And it was Bill Beretta.
Oh.
Bill Beretta talked Brian Henson saying, hire her, she has characters. Thanks to Bill Beretta, he said yes, and my first job was Muppets Tonight.
Muppets Tonight.
Which was I can't even believe it. And I was terrified. I didn't have any of those skills. So, yeah, it was scary.
Well, so this is a classic example of, as artists, so many times we hear the no. It takes one person
to believe in you.
To believe in you and say, I get her. And then you're in. So let's talk about the Muppets, because this is big.
This is a good segue.
This is big.
Yeah.
This is big, right?
So I ended up going to a cattle call, and they saw 10 people every half hour for 2 days, right? So I did my thing, and then Bill Beretta talked Brian Henson. I didn't know what I was doing. But when you have nothing to lose, you have nothing to lose.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, you get to the point where, like, well, I don't... Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing, so if I got fired, like every day I thought I was going to be fired. So I thought, this is a paid education. My dad, who is so strong, he's like, just your life is your teacher. When I was trying to get an education, he goes, I had to wait late for my education. Use life to be your education. So I was like, life is my education. So when I got on that, I was like, this is incredible. So I had a skill, but it was epic because I met my husband, Paul Rudolph, on that show.
That's awesome.
I met the love of my life on that show. I didn't have the confidence in myself for Hollywood. Hollywood, you have to be...
Yes.
It's a different vibe. When I'm sure you understand this, Doris, because when you're a theater person, and we just talked about it, people don't get you. If you can't market yourself or put yourself in a box, or if you don't... I never had good skin. I totally...
You're beautiful.
Freaked out over I practiced my makeup for 3 days to be here on camera. But once I realized I didn't have to be seen and I could be under a character and I could channel my creativity, something happened. And I knew the power that was in here, having all those years where I've worked and connected with kids. So my worlds came together. And then from that, I worked with Kevin Clash, who was Elmo. And then they had auditions all over the country for Abby Cadabby, segue. And people who knew me, people were calling me like, they're looking for a fairy on Sesame Street. Like it was a cattle call. So by that time I was learning, I was growing. I did Dr. Seuss, I did Animal Jam. I did a lot of different like little things that was honing the craft, because it's a craft.
Oh, yes.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
And everything is... for the folks at home, when you puppeteer, the camera is shot above your head, and so you're looking down at a monitor, and right is left and left is right. And so you're having to make people believe in what's in here. So you have to really put your heart in your hand. And then, but because I had those connections the way you have a connection with the audience, because I've had an actual connection in real life with kids, I was able to transfer like this connection to this connection. Because when I watched Sesame Street, I was struggling with so many different learning challenges. But when I looked at Sesame Street and there were monsters and there were all these things, I'm like, well, that's what it looks like in my head.
Right.
In my brain, because I'm able to connect with characters, the worlds came together for the Muppets. And then the worlds came together. My degree in child development came together for Sesame Street.
So let's talk about Sesame Street. Can we talk? What can you talk about on Sesame Street?
Everything. When I got to Sesame Street, I was just like, what? So when I walked on, I was just like, it was the biggest thing that ever happened to me. And I almost didn't audition. I was on John Tartaglia's Johnny and the Sprites through Disney, and I was feeling so blessed to be Ginger Sprite. I loved that show. It was so great. So many musical numbers and everything. And I felt overly blessed, and I was like, well, I probably shouldn't do this. And I was really I've always trying to get back to my original work, Humor with the Heart, which is in helping communities navigate life creatively. And Kevin's like, this is going to help you. Like Sesame Street is going to open doors that I was knocking on doors, but people weren't letting me in.
Yeah, I think if there's a puppet world,
Yeah.
here's Sesame
like
Street.
Sesame
and the
Street
Muppets and Sesame Street.
It's like the Olympics of children's television, and
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, you're right, I should do it. And once I put Abby on, I was like, and Abby has this like Gracie Allen take on life. You know how Gracie Allen just takes things. I love Gracie. Gracie's like, what happened? Did someone drop you on your head, Gracie? What's going on? She's like, oh, Joe, don't be ridiculous. You know that my mom wasn't around to drop me on my head. The maid had to do it. And so it was like, Abby is like Gracie Allen meets Daffy Duck meets Barney Fife meets, like, she just is hilarious to me. Like, who's the fairy that invented tape? This stuff is amazing. Like, she's like a stapler. What? Refrigerator magnets, what? Like, she's like fascinated with the real world. And it was just like, I put her on, and I was just like, you're gonna have to remove my arm. So Abby was fantastic. I also am a new character. I'm Elmo's puppy.
Oh.
And I'm part dog. People who know me know that I am a dog. I'm a dog in human form. ESP. I have ESP. Eat, sleep, and play. And so when I'm Elmo's puppy, I also played Penelope Penguin, who I did a song with Billy Porter. It's pretty fabulous. It's called I'm Friends with a Penguin. And it was just like Sesame Street is like Saturday Night Live for kids. We do multiple characters.
Yeah, so explain, like, on an episode of Sesame Street, explain sort of what happens for that episode and how you get from the beginning to filming in the end. Is there rehearsals? Do you write any of the stuff? Is it all written for you? Is it improv? Kind of tell the audience, because I always think that that's really interesting, the sort of what it takes to get to the end, because I think people think it just happens, and you're like, oh, no.
Yeah, well, it's a great question. So when you go on, Sesame Street has been around, it'll be 53 years now. I think we're going into 54. So what it is a 3-camera shoot. Again, back to Ricardo.
Yeah,
and we're drinking to you.
He invented the 3-camera shoot. It's
Yeah.
all Ricky Ricardo.
Yeah.
Desi Arnaz,
Just because it's the old cue. Yeah. I thought that we should, So, what it is you go on the street, and we'll explain it. I'll give you a picture. But so you go onto the street, you get a script. We have a read through, so we'll go through, and every year they have we still do numbers and letters and the basics, but then they have mission statements, and then we have our characters. So we'll do a read through. We'll have a read through, and they'll say, this is Abby's characters, and the writer, I think it's character driven, right? So you want to make sure when you do the read through, and us as puppeteers and as our stewards of the characters, I'm fortunate enough that I got to create Abby. So when I say I got to create Abby, it's their character,
but you
I got
the personality
and heart. She's funny. She's she can make mistakes, but it's like mistakes are just opportunities to look at things a different way. She's like, oh, well, let's do it this way. Like, she's resilient. She's a fearless friend. Like, she's such an upstander. She fights for, like, if the bees go, we go. Whenever I appear in public, I'm like, save the bees! Right out. Like, can we edit that out? No, she's bent on saving the bees, So she's like science, she's like how the world relates to each other. Like she's an activist.
Now, when you created the voice,
yeah,
did they direct you in a certain way, or did they say come up with several different versions and we'll tell you what we like?
Okay, this is another great question. So when they had auditions, they sent like a Muppet, like a generic Muppet, to all over the country and even England. And they gave you sides, like you do. Sides are like, you guys know.
Pieces of the script.
Pieces of the script in a song. And I did 3 takes. And the first one was like Charlie and Lola, which was really big because I thought, English, whatever. The other one was kind of like Daffy Duck, like, I don't know, Elmo, I have no idea. I have an upper respiratory situation. My eyes keep popping out like a pug. She was like a messy fairy. And then on the day that I went in to audition, I called my little godchildren, and Livy, she was like, Auntie Lex, I just want to tell you that it doesn't matter if you get a job or not, because you're a real fairy. Anyway, you're my fairy godmother. You know, and I was just like, and I kept listening to that and like, now here's how, you know, and I listened to her and I was like, I'm going to take Livy's voice in there. And then my audition was with Fran Brill, the great Fran Brill, who originated Zoe, and Maria, Sonia Manzano. So I was starstruck. The whole time. I was like, I can't believe this is happening to me. Oh. And then Fran Brill and we just improvised most of the script. And they were kind of monitoring the voice because, like, on Sesame Street, Elmo's way up here. So it's like a symphony. You don't want too many screechy characters. So they kind of went like this. And so it's kind of like, you know how Homer Simpson's voice kind of evolved?
Yes.
So did Abby. So, like, if I'm in a scene with Elmo, or depending on who I am, I help with that. Now she's more a little, you know, sometimes when Abby's on character and she's playing like whenever Abby is playing another character, like she's dressed as a doctor, well, I don't have to listen to your heart. Yeah. She becomes, I'm doing James Stewart, Zuzu's Pedals. Like, so Abby is doing an impersonation of Jimmy Stewart.
I love that. Oh
it's so weird. So I kind of play with that. And then once the writers realize what a complete wackadoo I am, they said, you know, Abby would dress up as a beverage for Halloween. Like, the writer said, what would Abby be for Halloween? I'm like, a whelping bed. And they're like, what? It's a bed full of puppies. And like, how about a cup of cocoa? Yeah, that makes sense. You know, so they like her favorite music are sea shanties. I'm like, what? So they started going like she's really crazy. And then they made her more that. So I did collaborate with that. Yeah.
But they lead you and then you collaborate and find the part and the place.
Right. So when we back to the read-through. So we do the read-through. We get on set, the well-oiled machine. Then we go, okay, let's read it. You know, okay, let's all read it aloud. Then the director says, okay, let's do a camera block. And then, so a camera block means like, so they place you, and for puppeteers, if you're with a person, we're on the ground, right? Because they're shooting above our heads. So we're on these little devices that roll around. Oh. And so we kind of like scoot around on a rolly device.
Wait, it's like they had the Munchkins in the original The Wiz on Broadway. They were on like platforms with rolling, they would scoot around as the Munchkins.
It's like we have worms. Right? So anyway, I'll send you pictures. So then we roll around, and then we're up above our head, and then we set these monitors so we can see the picture, so we're looking down. And then, if that isn't hard enough, we're stacked on each other. So someone's here, you know, so you have to have good hygiene. You have to really like the people you work with, because you're in their laps and everything, and you're trying to get the things, and then you're trying to see what looks good in camera 1, what looks good in camera 2, and then if we're traveling, we have a jib camera. So we have to know our words, we have to know our blocking, we have to be able to relate to the guest, and we have some amazing guests, so you try not to be starstruck, like, you know.
They're big stars.
Big stars. You know,
including
Abby.
Doris Dear sometimes.
And Michelle Obama. We're trying to get this happening. So you have to memorize where your puppet's going to be in the space, look down, and then, if that wasn't hard enough, they cut live.
Oh, God.
So that's how they do it, and it's so quick. It's like we shoot all the street stories, and they go, moving on. And it's fast. Insanely fast. You have to really know what you're doing, and you have to, you know.
So in other words, you know what you're doing.
I've been Abby for 17 years. 26 years with the Muppets. I've been with my husband 26 years.
Wow.
We've been married 22 years. My husband is also the vocal musical director on Muppets, on Sesame Street.
Wow. So speaking of shows, so tell me, before we finish, I want to know what's next. What's happening now and what's next?
Okay, so this just in.
Oh. Is this an exclusive?
It is kind of the first time I've ever said it on anything, so you know that Disney Plus is doing a new Muppet show, right? And it's called Muppets Mayhem.
Oh.
I'm so excited. I hadn't worked with the Muppets in like 12 years. And so an audition came by for a character because of Bill Beretta, who gave me my first chance. And he's like, I think Leslie should read this. And I saw the character, and this was like, it was instant love. I looked at this character, I was like, I'm in love with this character. I know who this character is. Oh my gosh, this is an incredible character. Now, I can't tell you what the character is. I will say it's a series regular, and that's all I can say. And so for me, going back, and I was just like, I can't believe this is happening. So we just filmed. I was in California for, I feel like, May to August.
Oh.
And this puppet makes a big impression. It is the biggest puppet I've ever had
And when does that start airing?
I think it starts in February. I think in the spring, because I'm not because my character is a surprise.
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to say anything.
No. Well, what a great way to end this today. So cheers. Here's to.
Look at this.
I know. Well.
I'm so sorry, but
daytime drinking.
I guess apparently I needed this.
Cheers. Here's to life, love, and art.
And more adventures.
And more adventures.
I'm so glad.
Cheers.
Salute.
It's Doris Dear's Bar Cart.
Welcome to the Bar Cart, the place where we make the cocktails we serve in the Rumpus Room. Now, today we enjoyed the Old Cuban, which is actually a new drink. It was created in 2001 by Audrey Saunders for Bemelman's Bar inside the Carlyle Hotel in New York City. It quickly became a worldwide favorite and today stands as a classic cocktail. Miss Saunders has said, and I quote, "My goal with the Old Cuban was to create a lively yet elegant champagne cocktail with a neo-tropical edge. I wanted to keep the recipe simple and straightforward, something with a sharp, clean, yet tangy profile that also provides complexity and effervescence." Well, the drink may be simple, but Miss Saunders' description is, well, very descriptive. As I mentioned, it all started at Bemelman's Bar, the 1940s lounge just inside the Madison Avenue entrance of the Carlyle, long a favorite stopping place for the well-heeled. With masterpiece murals by Ludwig Bemelman, the creator of the classic Madeline children's books, Bemelman's Bar draws socialites, politicians, movie stars, and moguls with a large drink menu. Now, according to the Carlyle Hotel's website, using his distinctive style of art, he transformed the bar with the whimsical scenes of Central Park that included picnicking rabbits and ice skating elephants. Fun. And rather than be paid for his art, well, Bemelman's exchanged his work for a year and a half of accommodations at the Carlyle for himself and his family. He should have asked for longer. Now, Ludwig and his wife Madeline were among the passengers on the maiden voyage of the Queen Elizabeth I to New York in 1940. Now, the ship had been painted gray during World War II, and by the end of the war, it was estimated that the Queen Mary had carried more than 800,000 servicemen. Cheers to that. Now, on one of their many trips, the Bemelman's family rendezvoused with Ernest Hemingway and Dorothy Parker in Paris. Bemelman's letters to Hemingway were archived with the rest of Hemingway's papers in the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library. And with Hemingway's extensive travel to Cuba, this drink seems only fitting to have been created at Bemelman's Bar. The drink is a swanky upgrade to the popular mojito, using rum and Angostura bitters and topping the result with 2 ounces of champagne. The Carlyle hired Ms. Saunders to revamp Bemelman's cocktail menu. The Old Cuban was one of the new cocktails she concocted. A champagne drink seemed like a perfect choice for this dark, classic drinking establishment full of old-world charm. A natural choice for the timeless, low-lit space, which brims with old-world style and charm. Apparently it's charming. The luscious cocktail became an instant hit with patrons, and soon Miss Saunders took the drink to London and beyond, where now it has reached global notoriety. And now I present to you the Old Cuban, recipe courtesy of Bemmelman's Bar. Now, you will need 6 whole mint leaves, 1 ounce of simple syrup, 3/4 of an ounce lime juice, of course freshly squeezed, 1.5 ounces of aged rum, 2 dashes of Angostura bitters, 2 ounces of champagne chilled, and garnish mint sprig. Now, we are going to muddle the mint leaves with the simple syrup and the lime juice in a shaker. I love to muddle. Enjoy. Well, I hope you enjoyed your stay in the Rumpus Room today. I sure did. I love when friends drop by and we share some fun ideas and bring joy to the world. Now don't forget, head over to dorisdear.com/girl-talk for all the recipes and hints from today's show. I hope you'll drop by the Rumpus Room again for more Doris Dear's Girl Talk. Stay safe and hugs and love from Doris Dear. And remember, a dress doesn't get you anywhere. It's the life you live in the dress that matters. See you soon. Cheers. Ooh, it tickles my nose. Cheers.
Doris, it's Doris Dear. She's a glamorous gal, she'll become your best pal when she's here.
Who's here?
She's here,
Doris Dear.
It's Doris, with a continent band. She's the perfect housewife, you're Rumpus Room by Pearlman.
Well, maybe.
It's Doris and her dear friends. They live up in the sky, but for the chance to sing and dance, her friends might also buy. It's Doris. It's Doris Dear. She's that girl on the street. She'll show up with a sweet little Doris.